call this meeting to order, please? May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Bennett,
Here.
Commissioner Chapman,
Here.
Commissioner Hallen,
Here.
Commissioner Ryan,
Here.
Commissioner Watts,
Here.
Vice Chair Summers,
Here.
Chair Blair.
Here. At this time, will we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, may I have a motion on the consent agenda? Did anyone have anyone they want to pull?
I move approval of the consent.
Pardon me?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. At this time, may we have our community development report, please?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. One item to bring to your attention. At your places this evening at the dais is a study that was prepared by planning staff based on a request by City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission for us to take a look at self-storage facilities. So we put together a white paper. That white paper looks at the current market for self-storage facilities in the City of Surprise, whether or not that market demand is being met in the city, and also provide you with some history on how the Commission and City Council have handled those requests in the past. It's an interesting report. I would encourage you to read it. We're not recommending any specific modifications to the City Code at this time regarding self-storage facilities, but if you have any questions after you get a chance to review the study, please give me a call. That's all I have to report.
At this time, we will hear CUP 08-011.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commission. This is a conditional use permit for Circle K. This is to give you a general idea of the location of this particular project. It is on the southeast corner of Bell Road and Saraval. Some of you will find this particular location familiar. It is a part of the Westfield Commons master site plan. This is going to give you a better overview of the actual project. This is going to be the convenience store, and this is the fuel canopy. This is the landscaping. I also wanted to give you kind of an idea of what the architecture looked like before and after. We had them add the stone along the side to give it some definition, as well as shorten the actual signage for more clarification. This also gives you an idea of the rear elevation. I wanted to go back to this particular slide. There had been a question previously about the actual distance from the canopy to a residence. And although it is not highlighted, roughly where my cursor is right now to the nearest home is going to be about 400 feet. We do have the Circle K client here to answer questions about this particular issue if it does come up. However, it is part of the project to have the 0-foot candles at the property line, and we will make sure that the landscaping also helps mitigate some of that issue. This is also a different kind of conditional use permit. We had a lot of input from Northwest Ranch about actual liquor licenses and the fact of having a Circle K at this particular location. We had an outreach meeting, and it was felt that some questions had been answered, but yet they still felt like there needed to be some more. So there was actually another outreach meeting held at the Northwest Ranch HOA meeting, which was actually brought up where Circle K changed their original liquor license for hard liquor, beer, and wine, and changed that to just a beer and wine liquor license. That does conclude my presentation, barring any questions you may have.
Thank you. Vice Chair
No
Summers.
questions.
Commissioner Rain.
No questions.
Okay.
No questions.
Commissioner Hallen.
In your outreach, did you have any outreach with the people on Sunset Grand?
At the first outreach, there was a a lady there from the Sun City, and actually, if I call the applicant up, he has her business card and can give you the exact her exact name as well as her title there.
Was there any real outreach made to the people there, or I know you had an outreach meeting with the other homeowners association, but did you have any meetings at all with Sun City Grand?
No, we did not.
Would you lay out on this map, because as I recall, there's a housing development that's along Saraville, and then there's going to be a condo development, is that right? And then retail, and then this gas station, or how do all of these things fit in here?
This is where the actual Circle K location is going to be. This particular parcel to the back, as well as the one to the east of this, has not yet been determined. When it originally came in for approval, it was going to be a bowling alley. However, that applicant did pull out. So at this time, it's still just zoned C2, but at this time does not have an applicant. They will have to come forward either with a conditional use permit, depending on what the use is, and or come in with a site plan that will again have to come in for your review. Behind this, if I can get the mouse to go, behind this particular location is going to be Castellina Village, which is an apartment complex that has already been approved.
Do we have, as far as I know, and you can verify this, we have no gas stations in the city right now that aren't shielded by other commercial. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, there are none that are against residential, correct. It would either be across from either industrial and or other commercial projects.
And this will be 24 hours?
That is correct.
The applicant inflexible on that?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, David Shizeski on behalf of Circle K Corporation. Commissioner Hallen, to address your question in terms of 24 hours, while we understand there may be some concerns for the community, I think through our community outreach meetings and to step back in terms of dealing with Sun City Grand and the residents there, we did notify a number of residents. I believe 25 or 30 notices were made in terms of our first outreach meeting, which was in late June. And at that point, again, we did have the executive director of the Sun City Grand Community Association at that meeting. And her concerns were probably as your concerns were in terms of what is the effect going to be on the homes immediately to the north across Bell Road. As we talked in terms of site plan and development constraints and some of the things Circle K was doing, and subsequent to that change to address some of those concerns in terms of lighting and noise and so forth, with the addition of landscaping, the light shielding and so forth, she seemed quite satisfied that this would have no impact on the homes to the north across Bell Road. In terms of 24-hour operation, our business as a convenience store is just that, to be convenient for the public going up and down Bell Road. With Bell Road being such a major corridor through this city and carrying such a volume of traffic, we really do feel that as compared to the Chevron down the street, which is 24 hours, the Diamond Shamrock, which is 24 hours, not being there, at 4 o'clock in the morning when construction workers are going up and down Bell Road and needing services truly puts this store at a competitive disadvantage. At a disadvantage, again, it questions what is the long-term viability of this project. We think that the things that have been put in place here in terms of landscaping, shielding of lights, the reduction of signage that staff talked about and things, we really do believe that will mitigate any impacts that may be perceived on the residences to the north. And again, in terms of screening, as Lance had shown on the landscape plan, with the extensive landscape that this project is doing along the frontage, the separation of Bell Road itself, the landscaping on the north side of Bell Road, there's a 6-foot screen wall immediately north of that, and then again the retention area that is further north of that. We believe the offset is truly significant, that there won't be any impact on the adjoining residences. And again, we hope we bring this project before this commission with no neighborhood opposition to the project, and we're actually quite proud of the work we did in terms of community outreach to attain that level of cooperation.
Good. Any other questions?
No more questions.
Commissioner Watts?
None.
Commissioner Bennett?
No questions.
Okay, I have no questions. This does require a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I close and ask for a recommendation, please.
I move to approve CUP 08-011, a conditional use permit for Circle K at Westfield Commons, and to adopt staff's findings and stipulation A.
Second.
Very good. Commissioner Summers?
Yes.
Commissioner Ray?
Yes.
Commissioner Chapman?
Yes.
Commissioner Helen?
No.
Commissioner Watts?
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett?
Yes.
I also yes. It has passed.
Thank you.
May I have, Commissioner Howland, your reasoning behind that at this time, please, for the record?
I feel all the gas stations in town are shielded from residential, and I think it was my opinion that having this gas station right on Bell Road with houses immediately across Bell Road, it is going to be an adverse impact on the people across Bell.
Please let the record have that. Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll move on to CUP 08-067.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the Commission. This is a project known as the Fry's Fuel Station. The subject project is located generally on the southeast corner of Greenway Road and Cotton Lane. This pad is part of the Marketplace at Prasada Master Site Plan that was approved as an administrative project as depicted in the planned area development for all site plans that have permitted uses. This does require a conditional use permit because of the gas station use. Furthermore, the site can be accessed through the master site from Greenway Road to the north, as well as immediate access to the west. In addition, in context, the site will include the Fry's Marketplace to the east, shop buildings to the northeast, a future bank, which is currently almost in the building plan process, and a retail restaurant pad on the corner. In addition, in context, Surprise Farms is to the north of this site. Sierra Montana Crossings commercial site plan, which will include the Fresh and Easy, and also have a CVS pharmacy in there, which is underway. The Sierra Montana residential development to the west, and as everyone knows, the Prasada development surrounding to the south and to the east. Furthermore, if we zoom into the site and look a little closer, this site will have immediate access, which will include a right-in, right-out, and left-in off of Cotton Lane, and also a right-in, right-out to the south of the project off of Cotton Lane. In addition, because it's a conditional use permit, we had to take a look at architecture impacts, and we found that the architecture of the canopy is consistent with what was approved in the Marketplace at Prasada Master Site Plan. What it does is it incorporates materials that were approved in the project that includes stone veneer, as well as the colors that you can see on the bottom are consistent. In addition, this site will include a 176 square foot kiosk. It's actually similar to the gas station that's on the Reams Road and Bell Road area in the Fry's area there. Furthermore, this gives you an idea, since this original master site plan didn't come before the commission. This shows one of the buildings, and this is the architecture that you'll see in the site. You can see that the material in the site, the veneer, is consistent with what was approved already as part of that Marketplace at Prasada master site plan. Furthermore, staff is recommending this project for approval, subject to all the stipulations, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rain?
No questions.
Commissioner Chapman?
No questions.
Commissioner Howland?
No questions.
Commissioner Watts?
No questions.
Commissioner Bennett?
No questions.
Commissioner Summers?
No questions.
I only have one, and that is in follow-up of Commissioner Howland. What is the closest housing development?
Let me zoom out here. The nearest, let me try to pull it on the cursor here. I'm going to get a little technical here, try it out. From this point to this point is approximately 300, a little over 300 feet. So the impacts are minimal. They'll also be in this area here. There's a phase 2 coming in the Sierra Montana master site plan that will include office buildings in this area as well as retail buildings. So it will be shielded by buildings on the north side of the site across the street from Cotton Lane.
Okay. This also requires a public hearing. Is anyone wanting to speak on this? Seeing none, I close it. Ask for a recommendation, please.
I'll make a motion to approve CUP 08-067, the conditional use permit for Fry's Fuel Station, and to adopt the staff findings and stipulation A.
Second.
Very good. Commissioner Rain?
Yes.
Commissioner Chapman?
Yes.
Commissioner Howland?
Yes.
Commissioner Watts?
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett?
Yes.
Commissioner Summers?
Yes.
I also yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to CUP 08-088.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Tonight I'm bringing before you a conditional use permit for Surprise Farms Gateway Pad C. This is a use-only permit, as in earlier this year in February, we brought forth the master site plan for your review. The subject site is located on the southwest corner of Bell and State Route 303. It's close in. This is adjacent to the 303 and to Surprise Farms Park to the south, the Safeway Shopping Center on Cotton to the west, and Bell West Ranch to the north. This is the original master site plan that was approved in February. And the subject site is Pad C, located here in the center of the development. A little bit closer in, Pad C is over to the right. This is a drive-through, and it has an additional tenant that has not been named, but the drive-through is intended to be a Dunkin' Donuts at this point. The architecture was approved at the master site plan stage, but I just wanted to bring this back to show you the character of that, and you'll see on the east elevation the drive-through window. This has also included a little bit of a changing of the phasing plan. And then you'll notice here that these buildings on the bottom, one of being the LA Fitness, the shops up here in the northwest section, and Pad C will be all part of the first phase. That concludes my presentation, pending any questions you may have.
Commissioner Chapman?
I have a question about the stacking of cars.
Yes.
I noticed there's 150 feet of queuing. Is that roughly 10 cars? Roughly?
About 150 feet, yes, it's about 10 on there. But the signage also will have 70 feet stacking distance, the actual call box, if you will, before that.
Before that, okay. Because
Yes.
the concern I had is that they backing up into the flow through of the traffic. And
As do we. And yes, we addressed that with this, and that will be a 70-foot stacking distance. Will be at least 4 cars in through there.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Howland?
No questions.
Commissioner Watts?
No question.
Commissioner Bennett?
No questions.
Commissioner Summers?
No questions.
And Commissioner Rain?
I have one question. In the letter from ADOT, it talks about needing a special permit, and I was wondering if that's been resolved.
Absolutely. They have been in contact with ADOT, and if I can go back to the phasing plan, they've worked closely with ADOT on this, and you'll notice in the northeastern section, that curved line through there, that slanted diagonal line, they worked with ADOT because that's going to be the bypass around the Bell and 303 interchange that is to be built in the near future. So they have worked closely with them to come up with this, and that impacted the phasing and other aspects of this project.
And ADOT's okay with it?
Yes.
No other questions.
The only question I had on that is, we definitely have a tenant in that building, is that correct?
But I would like to bring up the applicant to answer that question.
Thank
Hold on
you.
1 second.
Chair, Commissioners, Justin Gubler with Diversified Partners. We currently have a letter of intent from Dunkin' Donuts for this project. The approval tonight will be the catalyst to get that lease signed and get it moving forward.
Okay, so you have a letter of intent.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I needed. All right, thank you. This does require a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this? Seeing none, I close it. Ask for a recommendation, please.
I move to approve CUP 08088, a conditional use permit for Pad C at Surprise Farms Gateway and to adopt staff's findings and stipulations A and B.
I second that.
Very good. Commissioner Chapman?
Yes.
Commissioner Howland?
Yes.
Commissioner Watts?
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett?
Yes.
Commissioner Summers?
Yes.
Commissioner Ring?
Yes.
I also yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to PAD 07-369, please.
Good evening again, Madam Chair and Commission. Excuse me. This is a planned area development named Cielo Crossing. This is going to give you a general idea of its location. It is along Grand Avenue, south of Dove Valley. This is 203rd Avenue. This is 211th Avenue. Also give a little bit more context. This particular location is Sun Haven, which has already been approved. This is Grand Vista, and further to the north is BNSF. This is to give you an idea of the general plan. This project was originally known as Whitman Ranch, and when Whitman Ranch originally came in, it was all employment. What we did with the city is we worked with the applicant and changed that to be a mixed-use development. The intent behind that was to incorporate commercial with residential very closely. What we wanted to do with this particular project is to create an uptown surprise. Because of the fact that we knew that with Sun Haven, they were working with Maricopa Community College to bring in a community college for this location. And we really wanted to give an idea of an uptown and be able to provide those types of facilities and cultural events for people living in this area. This is a land use plan that's going to lay out what will actually be under the PAD zone. Something that I wanted to highlight first and foremost is this particular location here. This is considered the village core. When the original project came in, it was a small location, and staff decided that we really wanted to punch that up. We really wanted that to be the heart and soul of the project. So what we did is we talked to the applicant, and we worked together, and we created a larger village core. This is going to house a majority of the residential as well as more community commercial types of things that people will be able to walk to. With this lighter pink color is the MU1, D1, which is a mixed-use District 1. With that particular district, it will have community, commercial, as well as residential. It'll probably be a little bit less on the residential. What is intended with that is to have office over retail, as well as residential over office and retail, and hopefully get the stacking concept for that. As you notice, you also see a blue star here. That's to allocate as an elementary school. They are willing to give this particular parcel D to Natterburg Elementary for a school. At this time, they are still in negotiations with Natterburg. They're not sure if they need a school at that particular location at this time. So they're still working on that. As you get to the stronger pink color, which will be parcel A as well as parcel I, that's going to be commercial. And it's going to be a light commercial that you normally would kind of see in a power center with a Target on Bell and Grand. No residential will be allowed in this particular location. As we get further down into parcel P, Q, and down in the area along Grand, there again is no residential allowed in this particular area, and this area is going to be even more intense. There hope to be use of the actual rail line here, maybe some spurs or things like that. That will have to be something that will need to be worked out with BNSF. You will also notice that there is a yellow asterisk at this particular location in parcel Q. And what we're really doing there is really trying to encourage multimodal transportation in the hopes that pedestrian or rail will be there and be able to take people downtown and things like that and be able to get around downtown more often. So we allocated a location that would be a train station for that type of purpose. I'll go to the next. As you can tell, there is a crossing over Grand. Now this is proposed. This is not something that is fortified as of yet with BNSF. As some people may know, at the 203rd Avenue, there is an at-grade crossing. At this particular time, this will not be an at-grade crossing. It will either be a flyover and or an above intersection. There will be a bridge. It will have to go above the actual railroad into this particular area over here. This is something that we really worked with the applicant as well as traffic engineering and our traffic planner, Randy Overmeyer. This was one of the real sticking points that we had to be able to get traffic moving around. And it's not just solely for Cielo Crossing, but as well as Grand Vista to the north and Sun Haven. This gives you an idea of the home type. We're not looking for the typical home type of a single-family home. We're really looking for multifamily, really clustered homes. So this kind of gives you a brief idea of the particular type of housing that we're looking to incorporate with this particular project. We're still looking to incorporate open space so that it isn't so urban in certain areas, but we still would like to keep it in an untraditional type of single-family. This is going to give you an idea of the trails and open space. This project is really interesting because of the washes in which it has. As you can tell, the blue dotted lines are going to be the trails, and the multi-use paths are going to be in gold. As you can see, Parcel M is designated as a park, as well as Parcel N and Parcel C. At this time, you notice that there is not one in the village core. Originally, there was a park in the village core. At the time, staff had them remove that because they did enlarge it, and we would like the park to be more centrally located within the village core to hopefully take advantage of, so everybody will have the advantage of walking to this particular park. Since it wasn't going to be specific in location, staff had them remove that, so then that way when the platting process does come forward, we can look at that more closely, as well as parking around it for other residents in Cielo Crossing, as well as Sun Haven and Grand Vista. This is to give you an idea of the trail crossing that we're looking at putting in. It'll have a 5-foot wide minimum, and then we're looking at keeping 10-foot minimum landscapes on both sides, and that's to help preserve the wash and keep the desert atmosphere, even though you are in an urban area. With the multi-use trail, it's going to be the wash to one side, a minimum again of 10 feet to one side, and we're going to have a minimum of 8 foot wide, so it can be really truly a multi-use path with pedestrians, bicyclists as well. This is going to give you an idea of what a typical park is going to look like. And these are the washes that currently run in this particular project. Now, as all PADs have to go through, they do have to go through an outreach process. There was one outreach that we had. Only 3 people actually attended this particular outreach meeting. There were some concerns about architecture and low-level lighting, and those are things that we tried to incorporate into this particular planned area development. But we also met with one of our new groups, which are comprised of people that live in Whitman, Morristown, and Circle City. It is called the Northwest Citizens Group, and I believe it has roughly about 14 different members, and the public is able to come and speak at these as well. This is a project that we did bring up to them so that since it was their next-door neighbor, they would have the opportunity to see what is coming before them. They were very receptive of everything. They wanted to make sure that we kept the residential toward the center of the particular project so they wouldn't have to deal with that as much because it will be multifamily. And they also wanted consideration with the buffering to the sides so that they didn't feel like they were being enclosed in on it. And that's something that we will definitely take a closer look at when it comes to the site planning of the process. The applicant is here to make a small presentation as well.
You did catch that word small, didn't you?
Right. but long. Small but long. No, I think Lance did a pretty good job of going over the project. By the way, Jeff Bliley, 4800 North Scottsdale Road here, speaking on behalf of the property owner. We've been working on this project since about 2005 with the general plan amendment, and the city's always had this vision of this being kind of an uptown. When we first came to the city, we were looking for a general plan that was more indicative of what you might see in Sun Haven or Grand Vista, and staff wasn't supportive of that type of development in this area and has always directed us to move towards a mixed use, a more intense urban type development. So over the past 3 years, we've been working with staff. We processed a general plan amendment. All of that was changed to mixed use. And for the past year and a half, we've been working on the PAD. As far as the interchange at 211th, we work with staff on that as well. We have no problem locating that within the property and designating that as an interchange. We think that's going to help the whole area as well. And I think Lance went over the uses fairly well. Like it's three categories of mixed use with the village core. There was one issue I had with the stipulation I wanted to just bring up while I'm here. And just for clarification is all only. It's stipulation L. And I just wanted to clarify that that our obligation to construct medians, if we're constructing the half street, like on the perimeter of our project, our obligation is either to construct the median or to landscape the median, depending upon the timing. The way this reads, it kind of reads that we would have to construct the median and landscape the median, even if it was in the perimeter. If it's within our project, certainly, if we're doing both sides of the road, that would be the obligation. But I just wanted to make sure that stipulation L is clarified that it would only be the half street improvements. And I think the city's policy is still that first guy in does the median, the second guy in does the landscaping.
Madam Chair,
I'm okay with that.
we can clarify that stipulation.
I can go on, but other than that, I think that's about it, unless you have any questions.
Did you want to touch on the Air Force?
Air Force?
The,
Yeah, well, the project is
With the Air Force
is well outside the noise contours. We are within the graduated density concept. I think we're in the 1 to 3 mile range, which means a maximum of 6 dwelling units per acre. What we've done with the property, and we've had some history on this property, as you can see the layout now. We actually incorporated, there's a 40-acre piece. Let me see it, I'm using this map here. This parcel right here is actually a 40-acre piece that's owned by another property owner. But during the annexation process, because we can't create the islands, we met with that property owner. They said, go ahead and add us to your zoning case. We threw them in our zoning case. They're technically employment, so there's going to be no residential on that piece. But what we've done overall, and I don't think we're going to get to this number, what we did is we took the total acreage, multiplied it by 6, and put that as our cap. So the 3,400, whatever that number is, I can't recall what the 3695?
It's 90 something.
3694. That number represents the entire acreage within the property multiplied by 6, which then falls within the graduated density concept for Luke Air Force Base. Like I said, I don't think we're going to get to that number, but staff was concerned that we do have residential. And I think one of the things that we did include in the document is that we'd have at least 1,000 units, because staff was concerned that we wouldn't have enough residential units in the site. So we have committed to 1,000 units. But the cap on the entire development does fall within the Luke Air Force graduated density concept.
very good. Commissioner Howland, any questions?
Yeah, parcel P, when we're going to have another shot at this when the land use comes along, aren't we?
As this is just a zoning case, so as we develop, you're going to have a shot at when we plat, and also when we site plan. So when the site plans come through, you'll have your opportunity to review the site plans and make recommendations.
And the specific industries that are coming in will be further discussed at that time.
Well, not necessarily. Let me clarify that. We have within the document a table of uses. So if it's a permitted use within a land use category, that'll be a principally permitted use, and you wouldn't have the opportunity to say we don't like that use. You could comment on the design of the building or the site plan layout, but the use that goes in the building would be dictated by what's in this document.
Okay, well, let me go on. The uses that you've shown were discussed with the people of Whitman?
Yes, we had actually 2 neighborhood meetings. We didn't have a lot of attendance, but we had one neighborhood meeting, like Lance said, at the Hampton. About 3 people showed up. And then last week, I think it was, last week or 2 weeks ago, we actually went out and met with this group, a newer group, about 14 individuals. They all had an opportunity to review it. No one had any specific questions regarding the uses, I'll admit, but I'm assuming they had a chance to look at the document and make any comments. We didn't have any questions regarding the uses.
Because they've expressed concerns in the past about uses near their school is in this area somewhere. So that was the only reason I asked. And I called you on this. If there is any connection to Grand, that's clearly stated it will be an overpass. And is that right?
Yes, the new interchange that we're proposing at basically the 211th alignment, and I think it's reflected in the new regional transportation plan that's in the new 2030 general plan.
Oh, okay.
Is that would be, of course, it's going to be a flyover,
Right.
and then the 203rd interchange is going to remain an at grade for quite a few years.
Are any of the trails that go through this development called regional trails, or are they to the east of this?
Oh, Bart might know.
You know, we
I think
have the
they're farther
big
east.
trail.
They're farther east of this property.
Okay, so all the trail dimensions in here will meet the standards of the new plan that we're going to approve or recommend later tonight.
The next item?
Huh?
On the next item?
On the next item. So I don't want to approve this before I approve the next item. No, okay, thank you. That's.
Commissioner Watts.
Yes, there are several mentions of zero lot line, and also stipulation F has some mention of zero lot. Can you expand on where that is and what it is?
Well, and maybe Lance can. I think the zero lot line is more for the village core, because what they're trying to do is create really a downtown or an urban feel there. So it's not saying that everything's going to have a zero lot line, but the opportunity does exist that buildings could be built right on the lot line. If that happens, and we had this discussion with the building department, zero lot line construction is allowed. There's just certain fire code requirements you have to meet and building code requirements. So during the construction phase, if that were to be the case, we would have to meet all those building code requirements. But I think the zero lot line issue is something that staff really wanted to see and was encouraging, especially in the village core where they're trying to create that urban downtown feel.
And it's not also that the actual building will be right up to the street. There will be sidewalks and things like that, so it won't be right on top of the street. So it'll be very much like the Holiday Inn Express on Bullard that has the large sidewalk, then the actual building. So there will be no project where it will be right on the street. There will need to be setbacks, but the property line could be right up to the sidewalk line.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bitting.
My question was already answered. No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Summers.
I had some questions, and one of them is on page 69, where it talks about the development standards, and there's parking for one bedroom loft at 1.5 spaces per unit, and 2 bedroom plus or 2 plus bedroom 1.5. And my question of Lance is whether that is consistent with our existing zoning, or whether that is less parking than our existing zoning.
No, this does meet our current parking standard for the city of Surprise.
Okay. Then I had a couple more questions, and one of them is looking at the list use. There are some items that are permitted in the MUD3 zone that I think maybe we should have a conditional use permit. And one of them I'm thinking of is cement and paving material mixing plant. And having been in the San Fernando Valley and having a cement plant there with the dust blowing everywhere, I don't know if you're building a new plant whether that would be possible, but I would think that we'd want to be able to be in a position to ask questions on that. So I would be suggesting maybe changing that to a conditional use versus permitted.
Okay.
And then there's a couple more that caught my eye. Meat packing and smoking plant.
I really do want to preserve that one.
Make that a CUP. And packaged liquor store including drive-through?
Packaged liquor store.
There's another place where a liquor store is allowed. I mean, I'm trying to think what they call it, but it's just the drive-through caught my eye. Packaged liquor store including drive-through.
Are you looking at just the MUD3 or all three categories where it's principally?
What page is that on?
I don't know.
Isn't it with a drive-through?
Is that on?
Yes.
It's on the bottom of page 66, the second item from the bottom. 66.
Would you rather that if it includes a drive-through, then it be a conditional, the drive-through would be a conditional?
Maybe we need some discussion. That was just a thing that flashed in my mind. Maybe that's not an issue to anybody else to have drive-through liquor stores as a permitted use.
Won't the drive-through require a conditional use permit? All drive-through.
If it's permitted use, then it would not require a CUP. They could just have a drive-through.
Once they get it in here?
Yes.
That is correct.
So, yes,
Have a
let's
problem?
make it a CUP and all.
I would just request that if there's going to be a drive-through, then it be a conditionally permitted use.
That's,
Yes.
that would.
Is that okay?
Yes. Someplace else in here was another category for liquor store.
Oh, was there?
So there was
Okay.
two of them, one with drive-through and one without. But I'd have to look through
You
it.
only need the conditional if it has the drive.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, conditional if it has.
There is. There's a liquor store use, so this would just be, we'll make those all Cs. Okay.
So anyway, and I guess that would be in the form of a motion to add that as a stipulation.
Yeah, it looks like you'd want to add stipulation S. Okay.
And then I had one more item, and that was in the park, the three parks shown on the plan, and the notion that there'd be a minimum of 1,000 units, but could be as much as 3,490 something, whatever the number is, over 3,000, almost 4,000 units. And thinking of the village core, and there's a comment here. However, it is anticipated at least one centralized neighborhood park will be provided, and it's anticipated is rather vague in my mind.
Well, when we go to develop the village core with residential, if that's what happens, I mean, there's going to be open space requirements that we're going to have to meet with whether we do a preliminary plat, if it's going to be some type of for sale unit, or a site plan if it's a rental. So you're going to get that open space requirement during that process. I think what you're seeing in this plan, though, with the parks that we're showing and all the trails, is more open space than this project would ever need to provide if it was going through the platting process. Now, we had an additional park depicted initially in the village center,
Okay.
but staff was a little concerned about maybe the location or the type of park. So rather than depict it, not knowing full where it's going to go right now,
Okay.
we just agreed to locate that when we actually start developing the village core.
So we will likely see some kind of an open space element.
Absolutely.
Okay, that was my concern. And that's all my questions. Do we need to make a motion for the stipulation now?
That would be stipulation S.
I
Do
would
we
move
have a
to-
reading on it?
I just
How would that
quickly
be
wrote down
worded?
that the uses meat packing, cement mixing, and packaged liquor with drive-through shall be conditionally permitted uses.
Yes, that's the motion.
Second.
All in favor of that stipulation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Rain, do you have any questions?
Yes. I take it this has been annexed into the city.
We are in the process of doing that right now. We've already had our public hearing on the blank petition. When this gets ready to go to council next month, they'll hear the ordinance both annexing it and approving the PAD.
Okay. There's an out parcel in the northeast corner.
Correct.
That's not part of your PAD.
Not part of the PAD, but it's going to be annexed with the property.
The one north of parcel G.
Yes. Yeah, this parcel out, if I can use this little mouse here. This parcel here.
Yes.
That is part of the annexation, so it's going to get annexed into the city, but it was not included in the PAD document, so it'll remain.
Any idea what that's going to be used for, and how synergistic is it with the parcels that are around it?
Well, given its location and its
I
general.
really, yeah, we can't, we don't know at this point. It doesn't have anything to do with his.
Yeah, I mean, the
We'd
general
rather
plan-
you not comment.
The general plan calls for it to be employment. So.
Does the signage that's requested conform to our new sign plan
Does the signage requested? You mean the signage that?
for the for Cielo Crossing?
What we've done is we've actually included kind of a sign code for ourselves in the PAD document. It's just dawned on me that the city is actually going through and amending its sign code. In a previous iteration, they had eliminated kind of the master sign program. And so what we did, being that there was no master sign program, we added back in a section into our PAD that's similar to the master sign program. So all the signage for this project would be governed by the sign code within the PAD document.
That's acceptable.
City's okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's very similar to the former master sign program.
The trail plan that you have outlined here, has that been looked at in context with the master trail plan?
I believe it has. During the staff's review, they reviewed the proposed trail plan. I think it was pointed out that it's not part of the regional plan, but there was certainly input. Pardon? The community trail. But yes, staff has reviewed all of our trail plans.
Okay. on the Grand interchange, again, getting back to that, has anyone talked to the US 60 stakeholders group that are looking at Grand Avenue and the impact of what that section of Grand is going to look like?
Yes, actually, I've been attending those meetings as well, and the plans that you're going to see coming out of that right now do show this interchange being a flyover or a full-blown interchange over the railroad, and that given the new parkway configuration that they're looking at for Sun Valley Parkway, I think if Randy was here, he would tell you that the existing interchange at 203rd, where the city had initially planned to make that maybe a flyover or a full-blown interchange, with the addition of this one, and already having the at-grade ability there with BNSF, because you know BNSF won't allow any more at-grade crossings, making Grand a parkway, that interchange will probably function at an acceptable level. I think Randy told me till 2030 or 2040. It's going to really function well with the parkway model.
I have no other questions.
Commissioner Chapman?
Yes, I just happen to have a question about the school, Natburg School District, and the donation of school property. In reading the contract, I don't know, did you submit the contract, or is that part of it?
We did. I had some initial conversations with, I think it's Jim Nelson, was the former superintendent. In our initial discussions, we had agreed to set aside a school site. Given the type of development that's going to occur here, though, being it more multifamily, a little higher density, not your traditional single family, he wasn't of the opinion that we probably would need a full school site. We've still set it aside, and we're working through the details. Now there's been some turnover there, and I've been working on a school agreement for Grand Vista at the same time. So then I'm going to focus on this one a little more. But initially what they said is they might be more interested in seeing a preschool site and having the ability to locate some type of preschool in one of the commercial settings within the project, because there might be a better need or a bigger need for that as opposed to another elementary school.
Okay, in looking at the contract, I noticed there was a provision in there about approval of funding, that there was a timeline of 2 years to construct the school, or you would withdraw.
Yeah, and I think I think that the draft you're looking at is still a draft.
Okay.
And
the only reason I bring that up is that you can be approved for funding, but being allocated the actual money is a different story. And I know in experiencing this myself in California that I was approved for funding, but there was no more bond money left, and I had to wait 2 more years in order to get funding. So just some things that I hope that you would look at and consider with the district.
I'm pretty sure Natterberg's attorney picked that up, and we removed that from the agreement that was just approved for Grand Vista, because I recall him having that same concern.
And also, are you amiable to looking at the Luke Air Force Base flyover area that I know that you're required to put up a poster in a sales office or something to
Yeah, I
show?
I think the city still has the requirement to put up the signs in the sales office.
Yes.
Is it something that you might be able to take the letter that they sent us to hand to those people that are purchasers of homes or apartments, or
to have that in
the sales office?
I don't see why we couldn't.
It just seems to me, from looking at the South, that might be
Sure. That wouldn't be a problem.
Inform the residents what they're getting into. That would be appreciated.
We could do that.
Okay.
I have no other questions. Thank you.
Anyone else, commissioners? This does require a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this? Seeing none, I close it. Asking for a recommendation, please.
I move to recommend approval to the mayor and city council PAD 07-369, planned area development for, I can't pronounce it, Seal Crossing, and to adopt staff's findings and stipulations A through S with a modified stipulation L.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Howland?
Yes.
Commissioner Watts?
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett?
Yes.
Commissioner Summers?
Yes.
Commissioner Rain?
Yes.
Commissioner Chapman?
Yes.
I also yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
This time we're going to do LPD 08-024, Parks and Trails Master Plan.
Good evening once again. I'm very excited to come before you tonight. After 2 long years with a lot of meetings and everything, and we have this Parks and Trails master plan ready for your approval. And I believe this will really be a benefit to the city as we move forward. Just to go forward, I love this shot of our existing recreation campus looking down on the tennis facility and the stadium. And it's a good starting point for what we're going for. Now, the purpose of this is in 2001, the general plan was adopted and had a recreation element directive, which is to allocate the size and location and types of parks throughout the city. And this is fulfilling that directive. We have had outreach for the past 2 years. We've met with the commission twice on this in public meetings, with council and teen advisory board, and we even had information at our general plan meetings at the public. And most recently, we had a presentation and we were recommended for approval with the CRS advisory board. Before I went into a long speech at the previous meetings about the importance of the Parks and Trails Master Plan. And I won't go into that. I've bored you enough with that. But what I have done is you'll notice the largest staff report in history here. I have an attachment from the Land Institute that talks about the importance of the Parks and Trails Plan. And it goes into every one of these points: economics, traffic, environment, wellness, and crime prevention. I believe at the last meeting at the commission, it was Commissioner Hallen brought that up a bit. He wanted some backup, and this absolutely has all that backup information in there. And I encourage you to go over that. I want to go right into the plan organization, and this is based on the National Recreation and Parks Association standards. Also in here is going to be the existing park inventory, benchmark comparisons, where we're going to compare against other valley cities as well as across the United States, the proposed trail system, and development standards. The NRPA standards breaks the parks into 4 different types. Pocket parks, these are your small parks that are located within usually developments that are taken care of by HOA and that sort of thing. The city really doesn't want to take care of things less than 5 acres. Logistically, it just costs more for that. Neighborhood parks, they are 5 to 25 acres. They have half-mile service radiuses, and in the mapping, you'll see how that comes into play. Community parks, 25 to 100 acres, and they have a 3-mile radius. And regional parks, over 100 acres. Comparison with some of the cities around the valley, you'll see we have population, parks per acre, and the last figure there, the population per acre, I feel is one of the most important. And you can see we're not, the lower the number, the better. And we're not the highest on here, but we are at about 300, where Peoria is about 213, Scottsdale 249, so we're pushing to reach those numbers, to use that as a goal. And nationwide, you'll see our numbers are a bit different. And keep in mind, like in Longmont, Colorado, there's a lot of preservation of parkland and that sort of thing. Our existing parks, we have 12. We have 4 pocket parks, total of 6 acres, 4 neighborhood parks, and 4 community parks. 2 of those are actually being built as we speak, one at the Surprise Farms and one at the Asante development. And this is just going into a lot of the parks, the ones we do have. You'll see in the dark green down at the bottom right-hand corner. Those are our existing parks. And some areas on there where there should be some more of these neighborhood parks. Now this is going to show the community parks. These are the 25-acre parks, and you'll see the radius comes in here. And you'll notice these 2 parks down here at the lower end, they're very close. This is the recreation facility, and this is the Marley Park Plaza. If we had this plan in place before that, we probably wouldn't have located these parks in this area. This is going to show us, that radius and where these should be. And these areas out here, we've located parks, to cover that whole area. You also notice they're located onto trail systems. We feel very strongly that these things should be interconnected by our trail systems. And regional parks. Although there are none in the city of Surprise or in our planning area at this point, there are 2 that we are within their service areas, which is Lake Pleasant and the White Tanks Mountains. And you'll notice up here in this area there's opportunity for potentially to have a regional park. So we're looking at that at this time. And, you know, we're working with the different departments. There's talk about maybe having some area up there for off-road type of opportunities. You know, right now with the PM10, this is very limiting this kind of opportunities. But if we had something like this that limited that sort of thing, limited the damage that's done to there, and become a regional drawing point to the city. So that's it's out in the future, but we're looking at that at this time. The trails plan. Right now, we don't have too many trails for the city. We have about a quarter mile, which is the Lizard Run. Not very many. In the short run, this area here along Grand Avenue will be built. That is being built in conjunction with the Asante Park. And that, within the year, you'll be able to walk that trail. And we have this trail broken down into regional trails, signature trails, community trails, and local trails. The trail I'm most excited about is this big blue line here, 50-mile loop, is the signature trail. And that's the portion that we're getting our portions built at this time right here. And depending on the speed of the county, they will be building these trails here along the canal and along McMicken Dam. So I could see within 10 years we could probably have some of this trail complete. Just an inventory summary, 12 parks, 367 acres. And recommendations, you know, and this has been built out, what we see is 59 parks, 550 acres, and 389 miles of trails. It's a lot of trails, but I think it could be a very good benefit for the city. The plan also goes into standards. This is going to be standards that developers are going to use when they provide parks and trails in this. And this trails plan is going to make my job a little tougher and your job as well. And when we come in with the development, you know, we want the questions is how is this affected by the Parks and Trails plan? How are these people going to access this Parks and Trails plan? And these are things, and this is going to be the hammer that we're going to have the developer build these things. Currently, the second point here, currently in our general plan, we require 6 acres of open space per 1,000 people. It doesn't say what that open space can be. It can be retention. It can be pretty much anything. And what this does is it really closes that down to we need 9 acres of open space, and 6 of it must be active. So we can have active recreation, programmable space in those areas. Standardized maintenance. This way that the CRS, who takes care of our parks and trails, that everything is going to be the same sprinkler heads, the same, you know, so we don't have an inventory of 1,000 different types of products we have to keep. And with that, it'll standardize equipment and cut maintenance costs. Additionally, I'd like to point out this is a living document. I gave this to you on a CD. I think I'd like to think that we saved a tree or two on this. But when this is approved, this will be located on our website for download, for viewing, for that sort of thing. This was recommended for approval by the by the Community and Recreation Services Advisory Board last month. And like I said, it'll be available through our online website. In conclusion, please read the document about the importance. You know, I've been over that 1,000 times with you, and it's very important. Just wanted to show you where we compare with the rest of the cities, locally as well as around the United States. Our new classification system, our trails plan, and standards. That concludes my presentation, barring any questions you may have.
Commissioner Watts, do you have any questions?
No.
Commissioner Bennett?
I'd just like to say I think it's a wonderful plan, and I'd like to commend the staff for all the work that was put into preparing it.
Thank you.
Yes, it was very good. Thank you.
I second that, and no questions.
Commissioner Rain?
I came to surprise from Richardson, Texas, so I'm very happy to see what you've done in modeling after that. We had a great city there. Very good work. Thank you.
And Commissioner Chapman?
Let's echo the comments, positive comments. Great job.
Thank you very much.
This does require a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak? Oh, Commissioner Howland would.
I had to let Bart worry a little bit here.
A little bit, yes.
No, I'd like to commend the Community and Recreation Services and I guess their planning or their advisory board for the effort that they put into this report. I think probably Surprise's strongest point is the recreation facilities we provide. So with that, I'm not going to ask any other questions.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing from the public to speak on this? Seeing none, I close it. May I have a recommendation, please?
I move to recommend approval to the mayor and city council, LPD 08-024, the City of Surprise Parks and Trails Master Plan, and to adopt staff's findings.
Second.
Commissioner Watts?
Yes.
Commissioner Binnick?
Yes.
Commissioner Summers?
Yes.
Commissioner Rain?
Yes.
Commissioner Chapman?
Yes.
Commissioner Howland?
Yes.
I also.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move on to TA 08-168, please.
Good evening, Chair Blair and council members, commissioner members, excuse me. Tonight is a follow-up to the workshop that we had last Monday. I want to begin this presentation with a small caveat, and that is we're having some computer issues with some of our graphics. So if they don't show up, I apologize. I know some of them are going to be different because they did not transfer over from last week very well. Here we go. Tonight we're going to talk about, again, the sign ordinance. That's Chapter 113 in our municipal code. A lot of you probably wonder why we have a sign ordinance. This actually is not in the state, so we're safe. But this is not in our standards either. But again, we do have a sign code in order to regulate the types of signage that goes in our community as a way to improve the aesthetics in the community. There are some problems with our existing sign ordinance we talked about last Monday, which is we don't have a comprehensive sign program. We don't have a freeway sign regulations section. We've had issues with temporary signs and political signs. There's a need for revised definitions, and the last sign code update was done back in 1997. We started this process early in the summer with the establishment of a committee that included both staff members, those that worked daily with sign applications, but also with community members. We had Jerry Ankowitz, who's in the audience tonight, who's with the Signorama. It's a professional sign company. And we had Connie Stover, who's a design specialist. And both have been really, really valuable in terms of vetting all the different topics that go into a sign program. So I would like to go on record as thanking them for their many hours of work, and we did put a lot of hours into this. The committee met every other week for the past 3 months, except for the last couple of weeks where we were meeting weekly. And again, the committee discussed and revised the code as needed. The document itself actually follows the previous outline of the sign ordinance. And the reason we did that is actually some input from Jerry Ankowitz, who works with the code and our code and with a lot of other cities' codes as part of a sign company. And his comment was really that the organization of the sign code and a lot of the issues, a lot of the elements within the existing sign code were very good. And a lot of the sign companies are used to this particular layout, so we went with keeping the basic format, but then going into each section and looking at the language at a much greater detail. In the sign code that you have in front of you, there's what we call Article 1, which is the definitions. Second article is administration, how do we process permits. Third one is location, design, and construction details. This is how signs will go on to particular locations. Zoning district regulations, restrictions, temporary signs, flags and flagpoles, freeway signage, and comprehensive sign programs. The last two are brand new elements in the sign program that were not there before. Some highlights within their new code. There's there's greater definition about sign size restrictions. We've defined and actually rewritten sections on prohibited signs, given better definition to temporary signs. Political signage, we've changed that section, and I'll go into that in a few minutes. And again, as I mentioned before, we have the new programs with freeway signs and the comprehensive sign program. In a way, this graphic is the heart of the sign ordinance for our most important issues with commercial tenants and commercial businesses. And this is a summary, essentially, of what you can have if you are a commercial tenant coming into the city. And that is, for example, for parcels up to 10 acres, you can have 48 square feet. If you have a parcel that's 20 acres, you have additional area up to 60. And finally, if you're over 20 acres, you can have up to 80. That previously was 60, but we felt with even some of the larger projects come in, for example, the Persada projects, the Asante commercial areas, et cetera, that were over 20 acres, that there might be a need for greater signage in that particular area. We have the restrictions over here in terms of both the height of the freestanding signs and the tenant panels. Again, this is the area that we have the most issues with in terms of our sign programs, and when we have permitting issues with commercial projects. And this is an example of a monument sign. Again, some of the graphics we had last time are no longer available, but here's another example of a sign that's in the area. It's not in the city, but this is a nice monument sign. We have limit of number of panels on here that fits within our sign code. The height versus the base is well within our regulations, and again, we do have a base that is required by the code, and not just two poles holding up a monument sign. And again, on some important highlights, prohibited signs. We redefined this to really clarify that we're recommending we prohibit all attention flags, streamers, spinners, inflatable signs, balloons, and pole-mounted banners. The code in the past has been not as clear as it could have been, and I think by beefing up this section, we really make it clear to anybody coming in what's a permitted sign, what's a prohibited sign. And again, we're prohibiting home occupation signs. This is an example of some unregulated signage and what can happen. Temporary signs. Window signs are permitted, but they may only be up to 25% of the storefront, and window signs do not require a permit. That's a difference from what we had before. This is an example of temporary signs. One point I'd like to make is that we've defined temporary signs, with the exception of real estate signs, as only banners. You can't have temporary signs on freestanding signs anymore. They have to be as a banner attached to the building. This is a window sign as opposed to a temporary window sign. I wanted to make the distinction. Our code does allow for a permanent fixed window sign, such as these. It's limited to one of these types of window signs per business. Political signs. This is an earlier graphic that didn't get transferred over. We originally proposed 90 days prior to the election. You can't put your signs up until 90 days before. We found that in the valley, we actually found a city that actually is more restrictive, 60 days. We're proposing in this to move that to 60 days. And one of the reasons for that is that in a situation like we have right now with the present campaign season, you'll have the primary so close to the general election, you can have signs that'll be out there for 5 months or more, or even up to 6 months. So we felt like by restricting it to 60 days before any election, that would be a way to control some of the election signage out there and still be within the provisions of free speech. But this is what can happen with political signage, and it can proliferate quite a bit in the community. Freeway signs is a new sign program. Maximum height, 75 feet. Maximum area of 200 square feet and 880-foot linear foot spacing. This is an example of a freeway sign. That's a 75-foot sign. And this is an example of spacing, what happens at a 500-foot spacing and what happens at an 800-foot spacing. And you can see it's the example above ends up with quite a bit of signage in a short period of space. And the one below, I think, it conforms with what we're recommending in the sign program. Comprehensive sign program allows us to have signs that are complementary to the architectural character of the existing site. 15% increase above standard, both in number and square footage, and off-premise signage allowed within master sites. Since our workshop last Monday, we do have a few more amendments that we'd like to run by you if we could. This is an example of an entry sign and building signage. The first one is under prohibited signs. We simplified language is to prohibit any flag not associated with a governmental unit. That clarifies a loophole that was in our code process. Second one is signs not requiring a permit. Again, this is staff added a provision for wayfinding signs and reduced the period for political signs from before election from 90 days to 60 days. And again, that's consistent with the city of Mesa. Also, we're recommending that the exemption for non-commercial sandwich signs be eliminated. Penalties for violations. Staff increased the violations section to include violations of the code as a separate violation for each. There may be 3 or 4 violations with a particular sign. Each of those would be a separate sign, a separate violation. And each day that the code is violated constitutes, again, a separate violation. So there's and this is more of a way of enforcing the sign code by providing a disincentive to keep to individuals maintaining code violations. Freestanding signs increase the allowable square footage for permanent freestanding signs, depending on the size of the parcel or commercial project. And temporary signs, standards and regulations, we rewrote this section to better clarify the duration for the period of banner signs. Also, freestanding signs for non-residential projects have been eliminated with the exception of real estate signs. And real estate signs, I know this is a question that we brought up at the workshop, do not require a permit, and they're good for a year. After a year, the city does have the ability to review a real estate sign if it has been in one location for over 12 months. This is a topic that actually is not in the sign program. This is sign walkers. And the reason we're bringing this up is a new law went into effect this year but from the state that prohibits the cities from prohibiting sign walkers. However, municipalities may adopt reasonable time, place, and manner regulations. And by time, of course, regulations such as hours of operation, location, how close to the curb, distance from intersections, etc., and manner, twirling of signs, throwing signs into the air, etc. The reason this is before you is that we actually don't have a recommendation on this yet. Rather, we're asking maybe for some input from the Planning Commission. Is this a topic that you think the city should regulate? Most of the cities in the valley do not. There are some that are entering into regulations. We've been told the city of Tempe, city of Gilbert, and Fountain Hills, excuse me, are all starting with regulations for sign walkers, but the other cities have not started that type of program. So this is a topic that we're looking for some input from you, if we could. And with that, I'm going to be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay. Commissioner Benning, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Summer.
A couple of questions, and one of them is on process. Freeway sign for a major development, Persada, one of those. If they were to come in with something that is in variance to the sign program that we're recommending here, would that, I guess it would be a PD amendment, would that come to us? Would it go to the Board of Adjustment?
Okay. If you're talking about Persada specifically, I can answer that question.
Not specifically
Okay,
that.
because-
Any development along the freeway. Let's say somebody wanted to put a sign that's closer than 880 feet or taller than 75 feet or whatever.
That would have to come to the Planning Commission for consideration.
Okay.
In fact, well, I understand your problem, your question. If it's not in conformance with the code, we could not. We would bring that to you for review, but if you would have to abide by the code section itself, and if it, you don't have the ability to provide relief from that. Your review would be more like on appearance, and some of the aesthetics.
So if it were a PD amendment, that wouldn't take it away from this process?
We're recommending against that. Anybody can apply for an amendment, but we would recommend against that. Okay. We're trying to get away from doing amendments to signage through PAD amendments. With that, I want to bring up one other point within the code itself, though, is that we are directing comprehensive sign programs, packages, to be done simultaneously with PADs so that everybody knows up front what you're getting.
Okay, good. Second question is paste-on window signs on the inside of restaurants, Jumbo Jack Special, whatever, are those regulated in?
Yes, they are. They're called temporary signs, and they are, you can go up to 25% of the window surface for those types of signs.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Rain, do you have any questions?
Two points. One is at the workshop, we talked about the inclusion of schematics or diagrams. When the document's going to be published, can we look forward to seeing those in there?
Yes,
yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, you asked a question about how we feel about sign walkers. In a growing community where there's a lot of new residential development and the builders want to sell houses, they hire these people to stand on the corner with arrow signs to point the way, except they get bored real quick and start flipping and doing juggling acts with them. And I think it creates a traffic hazard. It doesn't do anything for the builder because they come around once an hour to check on them and then they hold them still. So I personally prefer to see no sign walkers.
Okay, we can't absolutely prohibit them. The only thing we can do, though, is regulate them in terms of hours of operation, location, and the manner in which they hold the signs. So, but we can go in that direction. I understand your desire.
Well, that's fine. I think that'll accomplish the point. But when you have them on a major intersection like Grand and Bell, doing that kind of thing with the traffic volumes, I would like to see a location perimeter tighten up a little bit on where they can use the sign walkers.
Madam Chair, if I could address that. What I'd recommend to you is that you select a specific zoning district to regulate where the sign walkers can be out there with their signage, and then regulate the hours that they can be out there. And in addition to that, you could specifically prohibit that they can't rotate the signs and move them and flash them. So I guess I would recommend that you direct staff to formulate a sign code amendment that goes to City Council that restricts sign walkers to just helping with the zoning industrial.
Yeah, I think the language in state law is reasonable, and so I think we have to allow some provision for visibility.
Well, what's a good industrial category?
I would suggest a C3 zone, which is we don't have. I mean, that's somewhat limited, and an industrial zone would be probably BP and I1, I2, and I3.
Just in those zoning districts, regulate them from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., and again, prohibit any rotating or flashing or moving of them. It provides them a location, an opportunity, limited hours, but it keeps them from being disruptive to traffic.
Okay.
Commissioner Chapman.
I support that, and I have no other questions.
Commissioner Hallen.
I guess one other point in your walker sign would be the size of the sign, maybe.
Sure.
Other cities are looking at about 4 square feet per sign.
I mean, there's two types that we see in town. One is the real estate, which are out on the weekends when there isn't any code enforcement, is my understanding. And the other is the tax service, which is not those are small, I mean, comparatively, but my other question is, I'm glad we're having this because I was looking at some of our older malls here, and some of them are pretty awful. Now, I know this can't be retroactive, but can it be retroactive if they come in for site modifications or, like a building modification or something?
Madam Chair, the owners of those signs would retain their legal non-conforming use status. In other words, they could keep the sign for as long as the sign isn't modified, other than routine maintenance, cleaning, painting, and things like that. But I agree with you. If there's an opportunity in the future for an existing commercial development that wants some change to the site itself, and we have the opportunity to add reasonable stipulations to an amendment to the site plan or PAD, as long as legal is comfortable with it, or in a way of negotiating through a development agreement, we can certainly have them modify the signs to bring it into compliance. The other thing I'll bring to your attention, if for some reason a legal nonconforming sign falls apart, gets destroyed, so forth and so on, then it would have to come into compliance with the new code.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Watts?
No questions on the basic sign stuff, but the Walker sign, there are a lot of things I think that may come about that may be best handled if we had a small workshop on it after staff maybe has presented something that feel it's significant for us to consider. So I would like to suggest that.
Very good. You have any other questions? Okay, the only other question I had to yours is the signs of the builders, or before they come to us, the planning and zoning meetings, they're up way after construction has started. That is one thing we brought up before. If you drive through the city, there's still some from last year's planning and zoning meetings out there that need to be taken. I thought we were going to make the builder has to remove those right away.
That's in the code. They're supposed to take those down, and we'll look into that, see if we can get a better enforcement on that.
And who is actually going to be responsible to follow out all these new signing codes and things that what division is that?
Madam Chair, that would be Code Enforcement Division of Community Development, and we'll make it very clear to Code Enforcement that we have a new sign code as soon as it goes through City Council, and we'll definitely address things like the real estate sign that you're suggesting. And we'll make it very clear that the penalties now are much more strict than they have been in the past. And to someone address Commissioner Hallen's comment, we are going to have code enforcement staff out more on weekends. We're going to be rotating them because I agree that a lot of the sign violations occur just on the weekends. So we're going to address that as well.
Very good. Okay, this does require a public hearing. Anyone wishing from the public to speak on this? Seeing no one, I close it. I would like to have a recommendation, please.
I move to recommend approval to the mayor and city council TA 08-168 sign text amendment.
Second.
Commissioner Biddick?
Yes.
Commissioner Summers?
Yes.
Commissioner Rain?
Yes.
Commissioner Challen?
Yes.
Commissioner Hallen?
Yes.
Commissioner Watts?
Yes.
I also yes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just a quick follow-up. After this works its way through the City Council process, they're probably going to have a workshop on this. I would encourage you to watch that. And then if there are any modifications by City Council between now and when they adopt it, we'll make sure to bring it back and highlight, as Commissioner Watts is suggesting, any changes and anything we need to clarify. Okay?
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I have a call to the public. Anyone wishing to speak on any subject not heard tonight? Seeing none, I close that. And Commissioners, does anyone have any information or anything they'd like to share with us? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Members, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Rain?
What is the current incorporated area and planning area in terms of square miles for the city?
Commissioner Ryan, the planning area is approximately 310 square miles. You might see 309.42. Generally, we say about 310 square miles of the planning area. Currently, what we have in the city boundary right now, incorporated area, is around 92 square miles. So we're only about a third of the way there.
But we've just annexed several projects up north, Grand Vista and
That's correct.
all that. Is that included in the
Yes.
92?
Yes.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Commissioner Chapman?
Yes, on page 7, under Objective 2.1, actually, it's 2.1.2, the print here is different color. Is that the change that has been made?
Yes. There should be, or you don't have color, but it's in orange. There's a strike through, and that, I'm not sure if that's the one with the annexation saying, initially, the existing document said annexations of type C or the study areas will require a fiscal impact analysis. The change should say all annexations will require annexation.
In 2.1.3, there's a change. It looks like it's from May to shall or shall to May. And I can't see if there's a strikeout. I'm sorry, it didn't show up in my draft.
Yes, that's another small change right there. I'm not certain exactly what the language is, but when it did say shall, it didn't make sense. It should have been a may there. So that's what that change is. It's more of a technical error there rather than one of the major revisions as far as policy.
That's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Allen?
You answered my question.
Commissioner Watts?
One question that, what's the next step if we approve this? Does it go to council?
Yes, it would go to council for their approval.
Okay. Commissioner Bennett?
No questions.
I just have one. On page 8, the last one of goal 3.1.4, can you just give me a brief idea of what that, I mean, I'm surprised it's so entailed. The city, at its discretion, seek to annex any existing developmental project, residential or non-residential, which receives or otherwise directly benefits from city services. Why is that the same as it's always been for us, or is this a new one, or is it worded differently?
Chairman Blair, it's always been worded that way. The purpose of our planning area, that 310 square miles, is those are the areas that eventually the city does intend on annexing. That's why we go through the general plan amendment and everything else and work closely with the county and any kind of property that be developed in there. It's because these are areas we do intend to annex. This was initially, this particular goal that you see there was initially passed in the first annexation document in 2002. So it's just following through like that. We, if you remember, it was passed in 2002 initially. In 2007, it was updated, and then about a year passed in the spring of 2008. We had some leeway in this document. We wanted to go back and say, since this change, is it working or not? And that's the time the council take a look at the workshop and said, yeah, it's working, but there's 2 different things we'd like to see. And these are these revisions that we're bringing forth today.
Okay. Anyone else with questions?
I have just a comment. The copy that we got is very hard to read of what the changes were because it's in black and white, and I guess in the changes. So I don't know if there's anything that can be done. So in future revisions, we can see it more clearly what's being changed.
Madam Chair, I think we'll change to a format that's more legal. In other words, with the strike through and underline, that way you'll be more readily able to see the changes instead of using a colored font that you can't see. So we'll make that adjustment.
Thank you.
This does not require a public hearing, so at this time I need a recommendation, please.
I move to approve LPD 08-146, a text amendment to the annexation policy manual.
Second.
Commissioner Rain?
Yes.
Commissioner Chapman?
Yes.
Commissioner Howland?
Yes.
Commissioner Watts?
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett?
Yes.
Commissioner Summers?
Yes.
I also yes, thank you. Commissioners, the next item is actually a discussion regarding September 2nd, canceling that. That is the day, that's the Tuesday after Labor Day. And what we wanted to know is how you feel about that. We have some options of either changing the date, is that correct? Or just postponing it totally. Is that correct? So what we'd like is a little feedback here on what you feel about this being on September 2nd. Does anyone have?
My comment is if there's a light agenda, might as well just push it to the next regular scheduled meeting.
I think there's only one thing at this time. Is that correct? One thing on there. So you would just do the next normal meeting.
We will miss 2 meetings in a row. Is that their agendas are that light? I guess I don't want to.
We would just take the one item that could be on the 2nd and switch it to the next meeting.
That's the only thing for the next month and a half.
That's it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Do we need to vote on that or just declare
At
it?
least, I would recommend at least a voice vote.
Okay. Commissioner Howland, how do you vote on that? Would you like to cancel the meeting of September 2nd? And that next meeting then would be September 9th?
No,
No?
it would be 18th.
It would be
or
the 16th.
16th.
16th, September 16th.
I would be in favor of canceling and having our next meeting be September 16th.
Okay. Commissioner Watts?
I agree with that.
Commissioner Bennett?
I agree.
Yes.
Yes. Jim?
Yes.
Okay, and I also yes. So that meeting will be switched to September 16th. Okay, at this time, there's a call to the public. Anyone wishing to speak on any items that were not out tonight? Seeing none, I close it. This meeting is adjourned.